Omnath, Locus of the Roil versus Vile Smasher the Fierce. Don't see this one too much anymore since the partners were banned. Yeah, I like the search for Azcanta. We've got a couple of plays to make at the beginning of the game, so we'll keep that. We also have plenty of lands for our landfall shenanigans. Going for the hardened scales to double up on the plus counters. Omnath, Locus of the Roil is a 4-mana Temur commander, a 3/3, new one from M20. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control. And whenever a land enters under your control, put a plus counter on an elemental. If you control 8 or more lands, you draw a card. Let's just go for the basic and get down the search for Azcanta. See if we can start getting into some elementals. The Vile Smasher is 3 mana in Rakdos for a 2/3. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, choose an opponent at random, and it deals damage equal to the spell CMC to that player or a planeswalker that player controls. We will put the land into the graveyard, because we don't want to draw into another land. Oh, Risen Reef. Does our opponent have removal? I do hope not, because Risen Reef is really, really good. I'd hate to see Risen Reef get removed, but yeah, let's just go for it. It at least gets it out of our opponent's hand if they do have some removal. And the good thing about this card is you get some value from it, even if it does get removed, because it triggers itself. We got the Flamekin Village from the top of our library there. We can reveal an elemental to have it come in untapped. We don't have any in hand in this elemental tribal deck. For red and tap, we can give a creature haste. The Risen Reef triggers on elementals and itself entering. And when they do, we reveal the top card of our library. Lands go into play tapped, and anything that isn't revealed just goes into our hand instead. Oh, Zendikar's Roil is really good with Risen Reef. We will definitely not put that into the bin. Let's just get that out straight away. Zendikar's Roil has landfall, and we get a 2/2 elemental token. So it's just fingers crossed that we get to keep our Risen Reef in play. Win or lose, this is what I wanted to do with this card, is get the Zendikar's Roil into play. Because if we get a bunch of lands on top, then we can just chain a bunch of stuff together. We will put that into the graveyard because we have 2 lands in hand, and Muldrifter isn't terrible. Let's see what we can get going here with the... We need a blue source, so let's get the Misty Rainforest into play. That will trigger the Zendikar's Roil, which will trigger the Risen Reef, and that will get another land into play, so we'll say yes to that. That will trigger the Zendikar's Roil and get us another elemental, which will trigger the Risen Reef again. So we'll just say OK because we've revealed a signet there. And then why don't we get down Omnath here? We'll put Omnath on the stack and hit the Vile Smasher. And there's another land. Getting pretty lucky with these. Omnath sees a land coming into play. We'll put a plus counter on the Risen Reef just to make it less fragile. And then there's a Rhythm of the Wild on top from Risen Reef, so we'll just draw that. Plus counter resolves. Oh, and our opponent, yeah, that's a pretty good start from us. Oh, and we got 2 plus counters from the hardened scales as well. We were going to get into... Oh, and our opponent's revealed their hand as well. Yeah, we were going to reveal off the top, or potentially reveal off the top, because it would have shuffled after the fetch. Yeah, not another land. We would have gotten into a Scampering Scorchers, which would have triggered the Risen Reef 3 more times. So, yeah, if you see Risen Reef in play, get rid of it, because it's a very, very good card. Especially if there's a Zendikar's Roil in play. Unfortunately, our opponent didn't play it out. Would have really liked to see that continue, but we'll get on with another game and see if we can get some more action going with our elemental tribal deck. Omnath, Locus of the Roil versus Gargos, Vicious Watcher. Haven't seen this in 1 versus 1 yet, so this should be interesting. We've got plenty of mana. And can we save some land drops for when Zendikar's Roil is already in play, I wonder? We can go for a tap land now into a mana crypt into a signet, and that'll be 4 mana, 5 mana next turn. Then we can go for Zendikar's Roil. And then we've got a land to make. Yeah, we'll just go for that. Don't need the mana from Flamekin Village, so we will not show our opponent an elemental. Hopefully our opponent doesn't scoop to all this fast mana. I've only played this commander in multiplayer so far. Gargos, Vicious Watcher, 6 mana for an 8/7 Hydra with Vigilance. Hydra spells you cast cost 4 generic less to cast. And whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargos fights up to 1 creature you don't control. A Vesuva came down as a copy of Myriad Landscape for our opponent, by the way. Some really slow ramp there. Alright, we need a green, so we'll shock that in. And then we'll get down this Zendikar's Roil. And Zendikar's Roil has landfall. We get a 2/2 elemental creature. Goes really well with Risen Reef. Omnath, Locus of Rage, is our commander. 4 mana in Temur for a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the elementals you control. And whenever a land enters, you put a plus counter on an elemental. If you control 8 or more lands, you draw a card. Sacking the Vesuva, Myriad Landscape, for a couple of lands. Well, there's an exploration. Unfortunately, we've only got 1 land to play. We don't have any fetches in the graveyard, so don't know if we're going to make use of exploration or not. Let's get down the Cloudkin Seer. That's a 2/1 flying elemental, and it draws us a card when it enters. Well, there's another land, so we might as well get that down and go for the exploration in that case. We will get a 2/2 elemental on landfall, and another one from the mountain. Then there is nothing else we can do. Oh, we can give something haste, can't we? So let's just give the Cloudkin Seer haste. Might as well get 2 points of damage in. Alright, a Mana Vault may well be seeing our opponent's commander here. We sure are. We'll see if they've got a targeting spell for that. They can target the creature themselves, and that will have it fight something. Turns out they don't. Our turn has started. Song of the Dryads. Yeah, I think that is definitely worth going for. We'll go for that and see what they want to fight. Aura spells do count as spells that target. So Gargos will be able to fight something here. They go for the elemental that's in the air, which makes complete sense. Alright, and before we take away our opponent's commander with Song of the Dryads, they're going for Aspect of the Hydra. Very flavourful card. +X/+X until the end of the turn, where X is your devotion to green. And because that's targeting, Gargos gets to fight again. So we lose 2 elementals here. But the Song of the Dryads still lands. I was worried about a Vengeful Vines or whatever that card's called from Zendikar. Let's go in for our commander. And we only control 2 elementals now, so it's just a shock to our opponent. And then we'll go in for 2 more damage with the elemental token and pass it over. Obviously we will see what we draw into next turn, but likely going to be getting down the Chandra Flamecaller. Cavern of Souls comes down, naming Hydra. There's no counter magic in this deck. I don't think there is anyway, so we don't really need to worry about Cavern of Souls. Might be hard casting a big Hydra here. A Primordial Hydra, that will have its counters doubled at the beginning of the upkeep. And when it has 10 or more plus counters on it, it has trample, so it is going to be a 10-10 trample next turn. Okay, a Farseek. I think we just go in for Chandra here. We could discard some cards to her in the hope that we get into something, but I don't really like that. We're just playing out Chandra into the Primordial Hydra, trampling her out of the game, really. Let's just go for the Farseek. That will trigger the Omnath, and the Zendikar's Roil will put a plus counter on Omnath. And yeah, don't really want to get out Titania without having a fetch to play around with. And we can't give her haste either, so... But we could block that Primordial Hydra. I think we'll just get her down. Don't like it without her bringing a land back, but if we get into a fetch, we can still make elemental tokens at least. The Primordial Hydra gets its counters doubled at the upkeep, so that turns into a 10-10 trample. It will become a 20-20 trample next turn. So we really need to do something about it. Okay, that's an extra 2 power with Rancor. It already had trample, so that's just pushing a bit more damage through. And it's good to make use of Rancor so that you can target your creatures and Gargos can start fighting stuff. Now, do we want to block here? We could block and get rid of it, because it's only going to be attacking in next turn. Yeah, I mean, we either die next turn or we just block it now. We could get a really good top deck of some kind, but I think we just have to get rid of our creatures here, unfortunately. Alright, going for the Hunter's Insight. I think it's going to deal 3 points of damage to us, which means that is 3 cards drawn for our opponent. Yes, it is 3, and Rancor goes back into the hand as well. At least they're having to hardcast their Hydras, because we have managed to get rid of Gargos, although getting rid of enchantment shouldn't be all that difficult in a green deck. A Mana Gorger Hydra, nowhere near as much of a threat as the Primordial Hydra was. Argument to be made for them not swinging in there. They could have waited, and then we would have really struggled to deal with it. But Mana Gorger Hydra will get bigger the more spells we play. Do we want to go for Chandra first? I think if we're going to have any chance of getting rid of the Mana Gorger Hydra... Oh no, actually, we could play a land now, couldn't we? And then we play the Omnath, and it will jump up to a 5-3, and we'll be able to burn it out. Yes, I was just deciding whether or not I wanted to wait for landfall, because oftentimes we want to wait to play our lands until after Omnath has come out, but in this case we want as many elementals in play as possible, because the sooner we get rid of that Mana Gorger Hydra, the better. Whenever we cast a spell, or any player casts a spell, it gets a plus counter on it. So Omnath comes down, that is a lightning bolt, straight onto the Mana Gorger Hydra. They will get their Rancor back. And then we might as well get some commander damage in on our opponent by giving Omnath haste. We'll swing in for 5 points of damage and see if our opponent's got anything else. They've still got 3 cards in hand. Alright, a Wasteland. We don't really want to see that because we want to get up to 8 lands as soon as we can. They might have their eye on the Flamekin Village, our haste enabler. Well, they're just tapping it down for mana. They want all the mana that they can spare by the looks of it. It is a Hydra creature because they're using the Cavern of Souls mana. And there we are, that's a big 8-8. Doesn't have trample or anything, but they can give it trample with Rancor. Alright, one step closer to switching on our Omnath's landfall. This has been a pretty slow one, unfortunately. Let's go for Chandra. And we might as well plus and get some elemental tokens. And then swing in with said elemental tokens. We'll just get 3 points of damage through here. Might as well swing in with them because we have to sacrifice them at the beginning of the end step. We can make multiple blocks onto this Feral Hydra and get rid of that again if they decide to swing in. In fact, we just block with everything because I assume that a Rancor is going onto Feral Hydra, and at least that way they don't get any damage through to our Flamecaller. And I've just realised actually they could use Wasteland to blow up the Gargos. That is not a basic land, so they could blow that up if they wanted to. They kind of lose 2 mana, but I'm sure they'd rather have access to their commander. Just deciding to wasteland our flanking village instead, so we are back down to 6 lands, and we'll need a couple to get Omnath's ability going. Alright, another big Hydra. When it dies, you can distribute the plus counters onto any number of creatures you control. Deciding not to swing in with the Feral Hydra, so we get to keep our elementals. Find that quite often with the Omnath Locus of the Roil because they don't want us to recast that. Let's just plus Chandra again. The more we plus her, the more likely it is that we can wipe the board with her, so yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We'll just try our luck and swing in. Our opponent might be worried about some kind of combat trick, so they might not block. Yep, they're definitely worried about a lightning bolt or something similar, so they're just taking 3 here. I'm actually going to keep hold of the Chromatic Lantern because we might want to discard a couple of cards to Chandra next turn. That way we can get 3 cards in hand. A Skull Clamp for those tokens would be really nice. Rancor goes on to the Feral Hydra. And that is distribute 3 plus counters amongst 1, 2 or 3 creatures, then double the number of plus counters on each of those creatures. So let's see if Feral Hydra is coming straight in at us or not. We do have to block. Yep, both coming in at us, so we have to chump the Vastwood Hydra. Now, what's that? That's 24, 20, 18, 16. That, well, in that case, we have to go like that and just take the 6. Haven't actually bothered to work out how much trample damage is coming through here, so it might be that we're still out of the game anyway. And yeah, there we are. We're down to -4. That's very well played by our opponent. Revealing that they had a beast within. Let's see what we would have drawn into. Yeah, too late for Cyclonic Rift. Yeah, if we had one more token to play around with there, then we could have chumped the Vastwood Hydra, and then we would have gotten a couple of tokens out with Chandra, replayed Omnath, lightning bolted our opponent and swung in for 6. But hey, ifs and buts. We had to block with everything on the Feral Hydra because it had 16 damage on us exactly, and that meant that we couldn't block this, and that got our opponent through for -4. So good game to our opponent. We managed to get rid of their commander pretty early on, but they forced through a victory anyway. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. Gargos in 1 vs 1. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.